headlines around the world. Florence, you're starting in Belgium, a country still reeling from last week's attacks there.
That's right. The Belgian paper Le Soir has a fascinating poll today about the state of the country after those attacks on March 22nd. Let's take a look at the front page of Le Soir. It sums up the poll. 1 in 2 Belgians want to close the border. 50% of Belgians believe that closing the border to keep refugees out is a good, to keep refugees out is a good measure to also keep terrorists out. And what's really interesting is there was another question in this poll that 1 in 2 Belgians said that the statement refugee equals Muslim equals terrorist is not an aberration. On the contrary. So the results of this poll are really quite stunning. 40% of people, for instance, believe that the Muslim community is actually complicit with people carrying out terrorist activities. So the poll shows just how divided the country is. And Le Soir sums it up by saying, on the one hand, you have people calling for a more open, cosmopolitan society, and on the other, you have people who want a more closed society with more walls, control, and authority.
This, of course, is a trend we're seeing in other European countries. Several EU nations have already closed their borders to stem this flow of refugees.
That's right. And the New York Times actually features a very interesting piece by a Syrian refugee named Layla, a 39-year-old refugee currently stuck in a camp in Greece with her family. You can see a photo of her there with her sons. Now, what's interesting is this article is available in English and also available in Arabic. And you can see it's a message to the European Union. We fled a war, and now the European Union is making a war against us, essentially a psychological war. And she's very critical of EU countries that promised to open their doors to refugees and that are now starting to close their doors. If we'd known that this was going to happen, we wouldn't have come. And she goes on to say that we fled a war to find safety with our families. Why is the EU making our lives more miserable?
Okay, Florence, let's move on to US politics and the Republican contender Donald Trump. What has he said now?
Well, he's facing
I love it.
He's facing the biggest crisis in his bid for the White House. Now, if you haven't been on planet Earth, you might not be aware of what he said. Essentially, Wednesday, he said that women should be punished for having an abortion. Now, this was so controversial that he himself tried to retract this comment, but it was too late. The damage is done. Democrats say this is evidence of his war on women. You can read about it here in The Guardian. And the Republican establishment say that this is proof that Trump has been unmasked as a conservative imposter, because once upon a time, Donald Trump actually said he was very pro-choice in an interview, and here he is changing his tune, and Republicans say that he's just trying to second-guess what conservatives want to hear.
And the conservative paper, The Wall Street Journal, is among Trump's critics.
That's right. Let's take a look at their editorial today. They talk about Trump's abortion gaffe. Not even the most fervent abortion opponents actually want women to be punished for having one. And the Wall Street Journal repeats something that it said a couple of months ago. Republicans who nominate Trump will be diving off a cliff without knowing what's at the bottom. It will be a daily political adventure from here to November. But what's interesting is Trump continues to lead the Republican race. And if he secures the Republican presidential nomination, well, let's take a look at another article in the Washington Post, which says that he would actually start the general election as the campaign as the least popular candidate to represent either party in modern times.
Wow, that's quite an honor, should we say, or maybe not. A quick word now on sports. And the holy city of Bethlehem in Israel is holding its yearly marathon today, which has garnered political and social fallout.
That's right. Let's take a look at an article in Haaretz, the Israeli paper, that points out that more than 100 athletes from Gaza have been barred from running in this Palestinian marathon. Now, Israel says their applications were submitted too late, and now it doesn't have time to process exit permits in time for the race to start. Among these runners from Gaza is a 15-year-old girl named Inas Nofal, and there's a portrait of her today in the Washington Post. It's very interesting. She's Gaza's only competitive female runner. You can see a photo of her here, and she says she refuses to give up the race. She's used to challenges. The first challenge is actually running as a woman. For now, Palestinian public opinion isn't really favorable towards women exercising in public, but it is changing thanks to people like Inas Nofal. Now, what's interesting is this race in Bethlehem is going to have a large number of female runners, and let's take a look at an article in Libération. It points out that there will be 4,300 runners, and 45% of them will be women, which is one of the highest female participation rates in the world. Now, so it's social, it's also political, of course, because the race is being organized by Right to Movement. That's an NGO that's fighting for the right of Palestinians to circulate freely. You can see Libération saying that this race is kind of giving kicks into the wall, and the whole itinerary of the race has been thought out to put into light the plight of Palestinians. Runners from 64 countries will essentially run along the wall of separation.
Okay, and finally, a quick word about my green and pleasant homeland, the UK.
That's right. Let's take a look at an article in The Independent. Really caught my eye today. Scotland and Wales could form their own country if Britain votes to leave the EU. Scotland and Wales are in preliminary talks to split away from the UK. And The Independent quotes documents leaked from the Cabinet Office that reveals this bombshell plan, including a bridge or a tunnel via the Isle of Man. Incredible article. And do keep in mind, though, the date. Today is the 1st of April, April Fool's.
It can't be. Surely not. Thank you very much, Florence, for that spin through the international press this morning.